I come from the Camlin Group, and every child in the country knows this company, and those in business knows this family. Individually, each of us now, we have separated. Many of us are not known. Every child born into the family can't work in the business because some people are just not interested and some people are just not talented enough. Are we going to be just wealth holders, pursuing more wealth? And is there any end to it?
In my family, I'm a third gen. I've seen this happen over 40, 50 years. I know that respect can't be earned overnight, and it's not something that you can take lightly also, because reputation can be ruined in literally one decision.
Well, money can give you a lot of power. You can hire, fire, you can buy beautiful things, you can be seen, heard, PR can happen, so many things can happen.
And the Oscar.
You know how many
goes to-
articles and awards are paid, right?
आधे पैसे लेंगे और आपको अवार्ड मिल दिया जाएगा.
But honestly, that's not real. Because the day you stop paying, you move on to the next person who pays.
Most funds have not been able to deliver 20-25%.
We are the only ones in the entire history of investors who ever made money. And then came in and we got out way before that. We are choosing to not do certain things, and that's just it is. It is what it is. Valuation is a made up number in many cases. Why do business if you can't make a profit?
Absolutely. You do businesses to generate profit.
For what other purpose do you do it? I don't get it. Therefore, I'm boring.
Before we dive in, this video is brought to you by Groww. If you follow this show, you know that I deeply care about making India a nation of thoughtful capital allocators. And Groww is one of those rare platforms that has enabled wealth creation for so many people across India. I've used it personally. It's clean, it's intuitive, and it takes friction out of your investing so you can focus on what truly matters. Your framework and not the logistics. If you're looking to build serious, long-term, generational wealth, then you need the right tools, and Groww is definitely one of them. Hi Leena, welcome to the India Opportunity Show. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know, I really admire the journey that you've had. Your work in terms of setting up a family office and doing so much in impact investing and also climate action is really admirable. And I can't wait to dive into some of these topics today. First, I wanted to start with the genesis of the family office. Because, we're in this wave where a lot of new family offices are cropping up, especially after COVID. A lot of people started thinking about liquidity and transitioning into a family office setup. So would love to hear and share your experience with the audience.
So our family, I belong to the Camlin family, and I also have a maternal family business, which is into perfumery and aromatics, both established businesses. But as with many families, there were many branches to each family. And over a period of time, I think we were wise enough to understand that we need rationalization of ownership and management, that every child born into the family can't work in the business. That is very important because some people are just not interested and some people are just not talented enough. And there is not enough space for that fourth generation for so many people to come in. So over a period of time, we have rationalized ownership and management. We have come out of several businesses. And that's where the portfolio, the opportunity, I would say, to recreate take the best parts of our legacy, but to recreate it to form a new legacy going forward under a new name, under a new umbrella, doing completely different and new things, but keeping the core strengths and values alive. That opportunity came for us about 10 years ago when the last of the big exits happened for us. And that's where we began to think about what does this wealth mean to us? Can it have purpose? You are part of a family business as well. It's a big identity we carry all our lives, and you feel rudderless because that entire sense of purpose that you have growing up and constantly aligned, and your personal life and professional life being so closely aligned to each other on the value systems as well, not just on the business and lifestyle and the needs of the business, but that I started feeling that was a very powerful thing that we had, which we had lost. And I said, how do we bring that about? And I realized that what was missing in what was then a family business and now was just money waiting to be invested was the sense of purpose. And that's where we started thinking about the family business as a family office, and trying to say that what is the purpose we want to dedicate this wealth to? Where do we start? Are we going to be just wealth holders pursuing more wealth? Uh, and is there any end to it? Really, how much is more? How much is enough? And what happens after you have enough, and everything you have extra, what do you do with it? That's where the genesis of the family office started. And I think back then there were maybe just 30 or 40. Now there are hundreds. This was about 16, 17, so almost 10 years ago. Started talking to the children, from the need to children back then were early 20s. Now they're fully grown adults. I may refer to them as my kids during this podcast, but they're not kids anymore, or weren't even back then. But back then, I think the need for them to understand the consequences of their long-term actions, of devoting large amounts of capital to impact in their early 20s, was something we had to do a lot of conversations around. Because the way the family sees it, that a large portion of our wealth is parked for creating a positive impact via investing, via philanthropy, and the whole spectrum in between, in terms of different ways in which wealth can play a role in driving impact, or capital can play a role in driving impact. But having said that, at that time, to create that family office, me being the single person with some history of corporate experience, and some history with managing portfolios, and then the other two players in this family office being 22 and 25. These were long and difficult conversations to have. A lot of intermediaries were brought in to make sure that my views don't overpower them, because I'm their mother, but I'm also the elder in that sense. And we all know how families are brought up, right? To respect elders in families. In India, we are not taught to have a healthy discussion or a healthy argument. We are taught to just toe the line. And I did not want that to happen in the future, because this wasn't my wealth. We were actually allocating three adults' wealth in an aligned manner.
Yeah.
And so three adults being in consensus and agreeing to it meant that a whole process had to happen of explaining to them what their choices meant. At 22, I don't think you can see very clearly what it means to live with those same decisions at 35 and 45 and 55. And that's the long road which got painted again and again and again via different voices I brought in, from legal to wealth advisors to family elders to people, to well-wishers who are lawyers, who are consultants, bringing in their own perspectives and making them understand that, are you sure you want to do this? So bringing purpose to capital was my main purpose in setting up the family business office, because otherwise we could have just invested in our personal names and we could have each done our own thing.
Yeah.
I also feel that the united entity is a much bigger entity than each of us individually. Right? Like I come from the Camlin Group. There were a bunch of us Dandekars working there. But together we are Camlin, and every child in the country knows this company, and those in business knows this family.
Right.
Individually, each of us, now we have separated. Many of us are not known because we are still good people, still doing good work. But that power of the collective is very strong, and that's something I was hoping to achieve through the family office, where we align as three people growing into our own journeys, and my children growing much bigger and outstripping my achievements over their lifetimes, but understanding that there is the need to align on objective purpose and methods to be able to drive that collective power and make it much bigger than each of us. So that's the genesis of the family office. I think your part two was on the impact.
Yeah.
The impact philosophy came from the fact that I have a uniquely gifted family where we are very sorted on our needs. And I don't say this so much about myself, but I talk about my children back then, in 10 years ago, when they were young and they saw suddenly their bank accounts balloon and they had no desire to do anything with that money. I actually asked them, is there something you want? And my son was collecting records at that time. He's a record collector. And he had just started collecting records, and his eyes went wide as a 22-year-old. And he said, "Can I order records from anywhere in the world?" Because I always scolded him for building, the shipping costs of, in terms of environmental costs of bringing such a fragile object from the UK and from the US and from Russia and God knows where all it comes from. And while it's a wonderful thing to collect, I always told him, buy it locally as much as you can from
Yeah.
within India. And so his eyes went wide and said, "Can I buy records from anywhere in the world?" I said 20, and he said fine. And that really is the sum total of what we wanted, was experiences, joyful experiences, meaningful experiences. None of us bought anything. We didn't buy a house, we didn't buy a bag, we didn't buy jewelry. We had nothing. We have everything. We've always had. iPad hai, iPhone hai, what more? I mean, how much more can you live with? What more do you
Yeah.
need? And the fact that I pleasantly discovered that my children feel the same way. And this is where your legacy values come in, right? They've had a lot of time with their grandparents and their great grandparents, and these are the values they passed on.
Yeah.
Not just me. It takes a village to raise a child. These are the values they passed on, where the business and the service to the consumer and our brand and everything was so much bigger than the size of the diamonds that my mother-in-law could wear. And she worked in the business for 40 years herself. And so that is something they just imbibed, and it was so pleasantly wonderful to see that nobody wanted anything. So I said, very good, let's put aside what we need to make sure that we similarly don't feel pressured on our choices ever again. What can wealth give you? It gives you the ability to do the day job of your dreams, right? You can go to work doing whatever you want. If you want to clean up the beaches all day, that's what you can do. If you want to play the tabla all day, that's what you can do. If you want to be a stock analyst, you can do that. It's so wonderful that your bills are paid and you can choose your 24 hours, choosing to follow your dreams, because when you follow your dreams, you excel at it and you're a positive contributor no matter what you're doing. You can also be the bigger and better person in every moment because there's no economic pressures. A lot of our choices where we make serious compromises on our integrity and our value systems many times come from our backs being to the wall, because money drives so many of our parameters on well-being today. And the fact that it need not do that is such a freeing thing for a
Yeah.
family, right? And it was wonderful to discover that my children can flower. Every parent, you have a child, young child. I had children who were just stepping out into adulthood. And it was so nice to see that they didn't really care about material possessions, and that I could then steer that conversation on what they didn't need to what they should need, which is the purpose, right? And my job as an adult then was to bring in the right collaborators, the right advisors, to show them visibility into multiple positive options of creating purpose and values versus just pure wealth. And that's what I started doing. And I happened to then take up a big journey of what are your options available. And I bumped into impact investing at that time. And I said, can we put a third of our entire net worth at that point was investable into impact? And I had to make them understand as well that this wealth will belong to you on paper, but it'll always be rotating in the impact. So when you come out making good money, it goes back to make more good money. And following, that positive, blending capital with purpose. Then we said, what do we do? A lot of the impact ecosystem in India is people focused. We are 1.5 billion people. Most of the funds, when they, 70% of the investors are overseas investors, they obviously come to India because of the impact they can have on the number of people that they impact, because this is the country where you can impact the largest number of people very quickly. Because the capital which comes in, so much of it is from overseas, then obviously we found it was very people focused. You found low cost housing, you found education, you found skilling, you found bunch of options. 10 years ago, fewer options. Now there are few more sectors, but Having said that, around the same time, Shrishti, my son, had finished graduation, and we were, as a family, talking options. What do we do next? And he's a big reader, huge. I don't know anybody who's read as much at his age. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you know what's going to happen to us?" He said, "I'm going to live 80 more years," which is true. His generation will live 100
Yeah.
and 100 plus very easily. And he said, "I have been observing climate and climate patterns since I was maybe 12, 13, maybe 7, 8 years. He was 21, 22 at that time. And he said, I am not seeing any pattern. And do you know the kind of energy? You're asking me to make life decisions on what kind of job I will do for the next 40, 50 years of my productive life, where I will stay, and trying to slot me into options which I have to decide now when climate change can knock all this down. Do you know that in my 80 years left, I will only be working 30 more years, but I don't even know where I can live comfortably, if I can have children, because they can have a stable future. Do you know how bad it is? And then he said, "You did it. My generation did it." And then that was that aha moment for me, because I said, you know what? Between 45 and 55, that's the age I was at that point. I said, we are the people who make all the powerful, far-reaching decisions in the world. Exactly poised at 47, 10 years ago. I said, yeah, I'm in the place that I can make the decisions. I'm in the right age, the right place, at the right time, with the right kind of resources. And not only can I start this journey, but my children can believe in it. Because I'm not creating, I'm trying to plant a tree under which I don't sit, because I'm too old already. But it's for my children, who are the center of my life, like for every other parent, and for every other child who's going to feel that climate crisis inevitably so. Like, you live in Delhi and there's no air for your child to breathe. And then you're doing crazy things, and because you can afford to buy the air purifiers and whatnot, you're buying them. But there'll come a point beyond which you cannot buy your way out of things. And that's something that somebody like Vivek felt. And he said it very powerfully. And then my daughter joined in equally. Not that she didn't feel it, but he was the one to voice it, because his unique set of circumstances at that time asked him to make decisions about the rest of his life. And he said, how do I do that? And so we began to think about then doing philanthropy as well. Saying, if my children, with everything that money can buy, with the choice to move wherever they want to, just to escape every situational problem with the climate crisis, can afford to do that, and yet they feel anxiety, what happens to the future in areas which are vulnerable to climate change, right? And we said, how do we do this? Then it began then a family office discussion of, where do we do impact investing and where do we do philanthropy? And so we had already decided to put a third of our entire wealth in impact investing. It was a bold and maybe, in hindsight, a very foolish thing to do, because we didn't have the methods. We have never been private equity investors. We've always run a grassroots brick and mortar business model. रोज उठ के office जाते थे. We used to come back. We used to service our customer. It was very routine, very boring. And all this trying to invest in other businesses, something we had never done. We were learning along the way. We could have made big failures. Happy to report that we've been fairly successful. We've made good amount of money. But again, it comes from a very stable, boring investment mandate. We are incredibly boring in the way we run our investment options. Because we put in a third of our wealth in impact investing, it was a large number. Then we realized we have to write larger ticket sizes if we want the number of investments to stay small. I said not more than 7, 8. We don't have experience with this. So if you have to work with companies which we are invested in, I think 7, 8 is your maximum bandwidth that a new organization doing this for the first time can manage. So if you have to look at 7, 8, then being spread across this allocation, it meant larger ticket sizes. Larger ticket sizes automatically meant larger companies and larger rounds. It meant no early stage, it meant no seed stage, it's just a logical one step to the next conclusion. So we said growth stage enterprises where the product is very clearly, product or service is very clearly disrupting, the current models to move towards sustainability. And we said we will work at growth stage. We said 1 million to 5 million ticket sizes. We said growth stage enterprises where you need then the technology to be strong, the product to be strong. There needs to be revenues already coming in, profitability either already there, or you can see there's a clear line of sight to it. We needed a second line to be there. It all logically coming from the fact that a third of our wealth meant that these choices had to align with that 7-8 maximum number of investments. Dividing the allocation that we had meant that we had to match all this to match that. And so that was decided. But we said private equity is going to give us returns in maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe never. We have never done this before. And so if we want to do philanthropy, what do we do? Because these returns are uncertain, we don't know. And we are making a promise to our nation in that sense. We took it seriously. So I did not want it to be 1 year a large amount, next year half that amount, a third year a third of that amount, depending on our fortunes year in, year out, because the rest of it was on the stock market. Stock markets are typically fickle. So we said we need to allocate our portfolio in a manner in which we can promise an X sum for the next 15 years, no matter what. And so we talked to our wealth managers about that, saying, so our philanthropy comes from our annual incomes. Again, that meant capital protection had to be factored in. That meant we had to look at a modest risk profile because we could not afford to lose the money because the incomes are going towards philanthropy, and that's a promise our family had made. So between what we've allocated as capital towards philanthropy and what we've allocated for impact investing, I would say more than half of our portfolio is now either invested in impact or the returns are going towards impact. And that's a large percentage. We honestly feel what we have left behind with us is enough for us. But having said that, that's not the end of this journey for us. We have exited a few businesses recently. We have now kind of coming into iteration 2 of our family office, private equity, impact investing journey. And we have decided to hold ourselves to higher standards. So we have defined our thesis sharper. So all the time I've been telling you about impact, but I did not stop to tell you so far what that impact thesis was. So it's always been climate focused because we realize that the climate agenda needs very patient capital with none of the reporting pressures that other forms of capital have, whether quarterly or annual or foundations having limited mandates. There are a lot of restrictions on many other capital forms, but family office capital is really unrestricted and the freest form of capital. And so we said, let's use it to go back deep into the root of problems. We realize the climate crisis is something that we all feel very, very keenly care about it. But we also realize it's one of those stickier problems where the results will come after 10 or 15 years. Everything you work on climate is a systems change problem. It's not addressing immediate problems, it's addressing systems. And that is a decades-long process. And we said, well, nobody's asking us questions. Why can't we do it? If we don't do it, who else will? And so we decided to work on the climate thesis. Again, climate action is a very big word. It can mean everything. It can mean nothing. And a whole lot of greenwashing in between for depending on who's saying what. So we felt the need to define it sharper, and we worked on it for some time. Actually, the pandemic was a great period to sit back and say, let's think sharper. And so we have very clear, identified climate action pieces within our framework as well. So if I had to look at our innermost circle, and we look at it visually, I look at it in my mind as nesting circles. And so the innermost circle is responsible consumption. because everything starts there. And we are looking at responsible consumption at all levels then, individual, household, village level, communities, etc. And the third one is of course sustainability of the environment, sustainability of the economic choices that we are making, sustainability of the businesses that we invest in, sustainable solutions for philanthropy which will outlast our presence in any landscape. So these three make the pillars of our entire impact framework, and from impact investing all the way to philanthropy. And as our philanthropy expands, potentially in the next coming few years, products, blended finance products coming in, carbon credits schemes coming in, those are all potentially, as we scale the foundation, potentially other financial instruments on the spectrum of impact also potentially coming in the future. So we are very flexible on where our capital goes, so long as it goes to climate action under these three pillars. And that's like our North Star in terms of how we align our capital and our non-capital resources for the family office. So I did tell you about the philanthropy. Yeah, maybe I should stop here for a minute.
That was incredible. I think, the depth in terms of covering climate action and how much you thought about it is very, very significant. But, just taking a step back, Leena, because, a lot of people, since you mentioned that, there was an identity shift that happened when you move from an operating business to a family office setup. And especially, the industrialists these days have been in the news talking about, how second, third gens don't want to run businesses, but they just want to manage family offices. Yes. And since you're doing it with your children, I think you would be the best person to ask, because I'm sure as a mother you also had these things, right? Like, will my children not build businesses but join the family office? Or what were some of those thoughts that were going in your head? Because that's also a very important identity shift that happens within families when they think about transition.
Okay, I never planned the family office to be run by my children or the philanthropy. We are doing this because it's a good thing to do. We believe in it. Okay, that they chose to do this is something which came about much, much later. So I actually started the philanthropy saying I will do this till whatever time I can do this, and intending to set it on its own professional path of growth, right? Independently. And that plan still exists. We never called it Dandekar Family Office. There's a reason we didn't call it that. We don't want our family to overpower our business activities, including philanthropy, which we run professionally like an organization should be run. It's a social enterprise like any other, and it's run like an enterprise. So it wasn't designed that way. We've always had advisors we work with. We don't do everything in-house. So we are a very collaborative family office model. We are a very collaborative philanthropy model as well. Everything is collaborative. We don't believe we have the best wisdom necessarily for what we do. And so we work with collaborators. We have some internal teams and we have a lot of external collaborators. And that's always been the case. When I started this, again, like I said, my son was fairly young, still not done post-grad, etc. So he did law subsequently, found out he doesn't want to be a practicing lawyer. Like I said, he loves he's a social scientist at heart. So he loves economic systems, but he also loves history, he loves political systems. He's a big researcher, big reader of everything that society made and the systems within it. And so that comprehensive viewpoint that he has, plus his strong belief in the power of capital and non-capital resources to drive impact, plus the evidence we have so far that our family is able to garner resources beyond itself and build in those well-wishers and ambassadors and collaborators for our work. So we don't stand alone. That's something we've kind of established in the last 8 years. It's a lot. It became a compelling case for drawing the children in on their own. So at some point, my daughter was in a corporate job when I started the foundation. And at some point, she said to me, I think I like what you do better than I like what I do. And she said she wants to maybe jump. And this is a story of how our impact has drawn us together organically. It's amazing because this is not a result I expected, and it makes my mother's heart very happy that we are closer as a family because of the impact that binds us together. My children had a lot of time with their grandparents, with their great grandparents, very, very lucky to bring in old world values when all this, you know, money games were not there and people actually earned respect, not bought it,
Yeah.
or bullied people into it, like some of our leaders do. And they have seen a lot of that up close. They've seen the founders of Camlin up close. They've seen the family business. They've heard stories about working in one room in their small apartment in Girgaon and those kind of stories. They've had a lot of time with, we had a whole family of old time employees and team members and managers who's been in Camlin for 30, 40, 50 years, who continue being associated. They've seen them come up to me and to other people in the family at random places and talk about the old days. These are things that you cannot preach.
Yeah.
They're just there and then they're not there. I think every successful family has those assets. But I don't know if every elder is taking care to show that to the next generation. We were lucky that we had exemplary role models. In my view, we're talking about a family office. I'm going to bring family back into the picture. In my view, that whole tree of family that we come from, I think the best part, the fruit on that tree today is what I see my children becoming. And I'm a very proud parent from that sense because I think we are making all our forefathers proud with who they are.
Yeah.
No, we can't say that about all our children. And I couldn't say that 10 years ago, honestly. But today I can say that because I don't want children who are just investing their forefathers' wealth. I want to have that next generation who's the flag bearer for everything which came before you. And so when you talk about, your first question was the reinvention, right? It's not a reinvention. It's carrying forward the best of the 4 generations behind you into the future, into a very different world, into a very different environment, doing very different things under a new brand name, which is Raintree, but still being the same.
Yeah. I think people don't fully appreciate the value that legacy brings.
Yes.
And, only people who've experienced it can, share experiences
Yes.
about it. But it's something to be felt and not something that can just be handed over.
No.
It definitely can't be earned overnight because it's
No.
decades of experience and the, goodwill creation that happens over decades.
Yes.
Like in my family, I'm a third gen. I've seen this happen over 40, 50 years.
Yes.
So it's definitely, I know that, respect can't be earned overnight. And it's not something that you can take lightly also, right? Because reputation
Yes.
can be ruined in literally one decision as you
True.
think about it. But, people obviously from this legacy background get a lot of flack these days, because you are always seen as the privileged ones or people with the silver spoon. But there's so much, legacy and also responsibility that you have to carry and think about when you're making any life decision.
So this comes with responsibility, right? There's always rights and there's responsibilities. There are privileges. When you go beyond rights and they become privileges, like we all have, we come with privileges. We are born to privilege. It comes with even greater responsibility. And so being able to influence that larger discourse around them, I think they're quite the flag bearer for the next generation as well in being able to put forth their point of view.
Yeah.
We always go out in different forums, each, in our own appropriate kind of forum and audience, and say, how much money do you really need?
What is the answer to that?
Not much. Not much.
Do you have a baseline
Not
value?
much. Honestly, I eat millets through the year because they're better. I grow my own vegetables because I'm a big believer in circularity and sustainability. We have free range chickens. We eat their eggs. I don't let anybody eat my chickens. I have names for them. So I have bee boxes. I have all of these things because I just live that life. It's not something we show. We really are those people.
You're truly an embodiment, and I think this conversation will inspire so many women, especially to step into their power, because you've truly led the way for your not only your children, but now now with your messaging being shared across platforms, I think it'll resonate with so many people in terms of reinventing yourself and how. I think it's really inspiring.
So here's the thing. We started talking recently because we realized that we have a thought process which can make other people think about the choices they are making. And being silent is also a choice. Of course, there is a choice that you can just go on doing your good work, but then never making that impact on making other people think. And I think, again, our ability to attract somebody like you to be able to then talk to us means that our thoughts are out there. And if even if three people start thinking how much is enough in terms of what money can buy, and can that capital, networks, everything that this family office position or a wealth owner, business owner position brings, how does it enable me to leave a positive impact in my lifetime? Right?
Definitely. And I think, going back to setting up a very investing, boring mandate that you
Yeah,
said.
it's very
right?
boring.
I would love to know a little bit about that, because, a lot of family offices and their CIOs who watch this content obviously talk about family offices are supposed to be for wealth preservation,
Yes.
not, like high alpha generation and things that,
Yes.
retail investors or sometimes, traders think about. So I just want to share some insights from an investing decision maker in terms of how you think about allocating capital.
So wealth preservation is number one. Again, if we lose what we have, we can't do anything good with it. Wealth preservation is always number one. We have different pools of capital which do different things, right? All of them have wealth preservation as a mandate. Now, some of them have wealth preservation as their primary mandate and modest growth as their secondary mandate. So it's fairly simple. So here's the thing, it's very simple. I don't need to meet any of my wealth managers or advisors more than once a quarter. That's how little time we need, because we are not chasing any alphas. You see a structured product, I say no. I don't want to do it. It's too hard. It needs too much time, too much investment, and you stand to lose a lot. Where are the unicorns? Has anybody seen one? The gada, ghoda, horses, working donkeys, sheep, cattle, all that is okay for me. In nowhere in the past, in my entire growing up years, did we look at this kind as valuation being the true value of the business. It's a new thing.
Yeah.
It started from, data-led businesses, right? Where it's intellectual property and therefore valuation is a number which somebody put for it. All other businesses have a true value.
Yeah.
And there are different ways to prove it. So when I did my MBA, our finance professor taught us that equity is the most expensive form of capital, because you have to give a dividend after paying everything else off. Now, equity is the cheapest form of capital because nobody pays dividend, nobody asks questions, you don't have to give a return, you can make losses for the rest of your life. In fact, that can be your plan, to never make a profit. And valuation is the only thing matters. Valuation is a made up number in many cases. Not
Whereas
entirely.
the joke is that as soon as you turn profitable, then you are given multiples of that profit and not, the high valuation. So a lot of businesses
This
actually...
is very new.
Yeah.
And I don't buy into it. And the good part is the next generation doesn't buy into it. They say, why do business if you can't make a profit?
Absolutely.
Right?
You do businesses to generate profit.
For what other purpose do you do it? Right?
Yeah.
So I don't get it. Therefore, I'm boring. Old school, very staid, very stable. We're okay with fewer number of things that we do. We don't want to be talked about.
So then give us some sense of your KPIs or target IRRs or do you even quantify
IRRs, yes, we do have ambitious IRRs. So again, this is the dichotomy in the system. So most funds will have a hurdle rate of, I think, maybe 10 to 12%.
Yeah.
Okay, now 10 to 12% is India's long-term average return on stock markets. So again, opportunity cost of our capital, if we were to put it elsewhere, has to be 10 to 12% because that is something we'll get without doing nothing.
Yeah.
If we have to set up an office, set up a team, do the amount of work that private equity does, it has to beat the 10 to 12%, which is your long-term stable average that you can expect in India. So our hurdle rate, unlike funds who put theirs at 10, when they're trying to chase unicorns at 25 and 35% IRRs, our hurdle rate is at 15. Well, our team will not earn carries if they don't cross the opportunity cost of that capital, right?
Interesting.
But are we targeting 25, 35? No.
Because most funds have not been able to deliver 20, 25%.
Sometimes they give
even.
zero.
Yeah.
And sometimes
they
they
have
yeah.
capital stuck in those businesses.
So here's the thing. My point is when you give a fund manager 10, 12 years to do what they want with the capital you give them, with the allocation that you've allocated. And you can't ask any questions in those 10, 12 years. Okay, you're essentially backing a fund manager. The reputation, the track record, etc. Honestly, the private equity office we run in-house, I get full control on the money. I can ask every kind of question. I can exit individually a different share. And so allocations will continue going down the impact route. Of course, you have to be selective. Any investment in businesses, in whichever form, listed, unlisted, whichever form, is a risky enterprise. It's your highest risk category for investing. So it is risky, and you have to do your own diligence, set your own boundaries. All of that has to be done. I'm not discounting. It's not easy, and it's never going to be easy, because narratives are getting better and better.
Yeah.
The
storytelling
is getting
really
better
good
and better, right? And it's very hard on some models to discern the right from wrong. Very hard for, which is why also we don't do early stage, because it's many times at a very raw stage. There are no parallels for comparison. There is no track record. There is no proof. We just feel the risk reward doesn't work out for us. The rewards can be huge, but also be not completely zero. The risk is very high. So like I said, boring. We are muted risk, muted reward. Nothing exciting about that.
But that's the way to truly preserve your wealth in one sense.
That's our way.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm talking to you to hoping to other people see that boring is good.
Yeah. I agree. I fundamentally agree with your approach. And then, also, what are some of your biggest learnings? Because, a lot of family offices who started investing in, say, the private space 10, 15 years back, went through this entire cycle of first, trying to invest via funds. And then a lot of them started doing direct investing. So has that been something similar?
No, we've never done funds. We have a few. During the pandemic, we were finding it hard to find our niche, and the deal flow was very low, and so we did do one fund of funds where all the underlying funds are signing up to the IFC ESG criteria. So in that sense, I wouldn't say in terms of positive impact, not assured, but at least negative impact is somewhere. It's a do no harm kind of portfolio. We do have one fund of funds because during the pandemic, our capital was lying undeployed. So at that point, we did put in some because we need to move it. Other than that, we have one or two funds from before we set up the family office. I don't want to say this on an open forum because the whole industry will judge me, but we don't have too many fund investments. There are just way too many funds nowadays, and it's hard to get into the track record of that many fund managers. I think some of the fund theses are sounding quite outlandish, made up, especially on the impact spectrum. Not to say there aren't good funds out there. It's getting harder to sift through that increasing universe. And I think it has industry, as a fund industry, I think it has crossed its peak, I would say. Now it is overcrowded.
Yeah.
So I find that crowd hard to deal with. And once you open up shop saying we're open to funds, you get millions of them every
You get
morning.
bombarded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every morning I wake up to about 10 or 15 unsolicited mails. And I have a very senior mentor in the Impact Universe, and she was telling me about how she connected somebody by email to people, and those people didn't even respond. And I looked at her and I said, you know what? I also don't respond a lot of times. And she was like aghast, because in old school dynamics, when somebody does a communication, you have to communicate back.
Yeah.
And I believe in it till the volume becomes to the extent
Yeah.
that you can't deal with it.
Yeah, it's just too much.
It's just too
inbound, right?
much.
Yeah.
So it's like the telecallers, right? Every afternoon, 2 to 4, you have
Yeah.
random calls coming now.
And bankers and, from
exactly
across
my
the
point.
country.
There's a whole 300-year history of checks being passed without somebody calling you. God forbid you give a slightly larger text. And now, unless they call you from their personal mobile phones, and this is my argument with banks as well. Why do you not have a registered line which I can save as your number? Every employee in the bank, as they come and go, has my personal phone because they just dial off their mobiles.
Yeah.
It's an invasion of privacy beyond acceptable beliefs for me.
Absolutely.
I
don't appreciate the cold calling
no,
also.
no, I
It
don't
happens
appreciate
too
banks
much.
calling me
Yeah.
even though I'm their client. I don't appreciate people selling me clothes and they'll say phone number de do. And I said, what for? No, if you have returns, you will need it. I said, no, when I have returns, I will come to you.
Yeah.
You never need to know my number.
Yeah.
And then they can't argue it. But our system needs it. I said, no, your system doesn't need it. There is no rule in the world which needs your system to take my phone number down or my email ID. And then finally, they have to call in a supervisor because they've been trained so much. And this is the same with funds, with advisors, with unsolicited investment opportunities. You'll get mails every morning with something being built in Florida and something being built in God knows where.
Yeah.
Places I've never heard of, never seen. I don't know where they get your email ID from.
Because it's all
So
data
where the-
mined on some Excel
No,
sheet
it's
somewhere.
ridiculous. You stop being a person, right?
Yeah.
It's just the bag of money they see behind you.
Yeah.
Who am I then?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not nice at all.
That's the unfortunate side of it.
Yeah. And so just to, I think as a family where we get to a size where managers are managing things over a period of time, our first iteration for the family offices has been with us paying that adequate attention to keep sure we are on track. But as things get bigger, I don't know how the next generation will choose to play this out. Inevitably, it will become more professional. I think knowing what not to do is a bigger narrative to build and bigger narrative to hold yourself to than what you will do. Because otherwise, how do you trust professionals who may come in for 2 years, 3 years to follow your thesis?
Yeah.
If you don't have a clear thesis. So we've just decided not to do our first discussion always as a family is what will we not do. Okay? Then we decide what we will do. That's the easier choice. What you will not do is a do no harm. We will not do.
Eliminating
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
won't
This
do.
is clear boundaries. You don't cross that. And once we align on that, it's a lot easier to figure out where your space lies. For your capital, for yourself, for your brand, everything becomes easier. So, UT is sitting here in this room. He's our Macom's head. And when he came in, I think one of the first briefs I gave him is the line I will not cross. For example, women-led businesses, women-led wealth managers, right? For women-led family offices. Honestly, in my family, I had no disadvantage as a woman. So I never go on those panels which say, how did you do this in spite of being a woman?
Yeah.
In my life, fortunately, there's not been that story. And I say, cannot milk a story which is not there. So these kind of narratives, my first brief was, I will not do them. Because it's not the truth.
Yeah.
Right? And so there are many of us fortunate enough. India has changed. This narrative of women not having been brought up to lead or to take decisions still exists. I agree it's a country with deep dichotomies. But there's also this other side where people like you and me did not grow up with those disadvantages, and we cannot claim those disadvantages when they weren't there.
Yeah.
And
you have to live your life authentically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the
Absolutely.
truth. So there are certain things we will not do, and so there are some things I don't do. I don't do funds, I don't do structures, I don't do real estate unless I'm actually using it. There are certain categories we don't feel comfortable. We are not doing extractive minerals, we are not doing oil and gas, we are not doing a bunch of things. It's part of our philosophy of where we think our money should go. And I'm not judging anybody who's doing what they're doing. We are choosing to not do a certain things. We are choosing to do a few things. Fewer things than we are choosing not to do. And that's just it is. It is what it is.
And I would love to also focus on your impact work because you've achieved such remarkable impact on ground, be it with your work in Western Ghats and everywhere. Just for our audience, would you be able to share some of this so that
Yeah.
we can quantify it and make it real in their minds in terms of
It
how to
does.
think?
It does. And you really opened up a question on which, honestly, I can't stop talking some days.
Please go on.
So, I think the landscape model which we run as a foundation is very, very needed initiative in every country where a large portion of their population lives in very close connection to the land. Okay, so it's a model based on a landscape simply being a piece of earth defined by whatever boundaries you want. Lot of you must have heard of Amazon, etc. These are natural boundaries. In India, because we have a seasonal monsoon, Raintree's boundaries are always defined by watershed boundaries. So our first project is a micro watershed. Our second project is an entire river basin, a much
Right.
larger scale, because jal hai to jeevan hai. And so if you're looking at balancing long-term economic, community, and natural systems well-being from a long-term climate resilience point of view, where nature and its natural systems, abiotic and biological, both flora, fauna, and your water, air, all these cycles, right? If they have to be, stable over a long period, given climate change, if communities have to thrive within that ecosystem, because the way their economic systems are, they're dependent on the land and nature to give them the ecosystem services they need, right? So farmers, tribals, all these fishermen, all of them live off the land directly and indirectly. And so if you need this interrelated well-being to come in from a climate resilience point of view, you have to work comprehensively, very patiently on all the systems simultaneously. So Raintree's model is hoping to establish climate resilience for vulnerable landscapes. And we are taking the community and the community system, social, economic, political, every other man-made system as being a subset of the planetary systems for that landscape. Right? We are all a part of nature. We are not separate from it. And so we never talk about, there's a lot of debate in our office whether we call it climate resilience for vulnerable landscapes and communities, because man thinks they need to be mentioned separately from every other animal who has equal right to live and prosper. Or should we call it climate resilience for vulnerable landscapes? Because people don't understand that landscapes come with man being one animal out of so many, right? So that's a very patient program. We work very deeply. It's very collaborative and it's very needs based. We don't go rolling out ready solutions. We actually co-build with the communities so that they can work solutions for themselves. So it's a very simple process. To give you in a nutshell, we baseline all the natural aspects of the land. So hydrogeological features, land use, land cover changes, rivers, spring sheds, aquifers, bunch of these things that you map out to actually survey the landscape. It's done on a common grid. You could take a 5 kilometer grid, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, whatever it is. It all interspersed. Along with that, we do biodiversity mapping. So the entire biodiversity is also on the same grid. And then we do community baselining, which is very deep, very intense, which also sits on the same grid. What it gives you is for a piece of land within that larger landscape, which is a unified watershed system, like a river basin, will give you for each grid a complete narrative of the land, its natural systems, biodiversity, and community. And so when you're looking at communities and gram panchayats making decisions for 5 years, for 10 years onto their long-term well-being in various aspects, what Raintree does is brings the voice of nature to the community. Because nowhere are we taught to see the opportunities in nature, but at the same time see the limitations. So every right comes with a matching responsibility. We have seen as man, when we make economic decisions, we see the rights. We don't see our responsibility. Our job is to bring the voice of nature to the community, saying this is what you have, this is your play. You start from here, this is where your opportunity is, and this is where your opportunity stops. Because beyond that is exploitative, it doesn't regenerate. And that voice really is what nature does. With what Raintree will do, bringing the voice of nature to very collaborative, and then the local stakeholders, the gram panchayat, the self-help groups, the farmer groups, FPOs, different departments of the government, religious leaders, local health practitioners. There's a whole lot of formal and informal threads running through rural societies. You know that. There are many formal mechanisms under our Indian system, but there are also informal traditional cultural mechanisms of community coordination and actioning. And so we use all of these, and together we will sit with the gram panchayat, which is the ultimate authority for a village, and build the plan. And our job is to be a facilitating agency. We don't give any grants. We are giving zero financial grants or materials. We facilitate. So we will help them, will help build capacity in the villages to unlock government funding to get their work done. We will give them a civil engineer if need be to make sure that the dam that the government is building or the roads that the government is building is done to a good quality, so it doesn't need to be built every year. Right? But we will not say we are building you a road. We are giving you lights. We are building toilets for you. We never do that. We always help them do it. We help them raise philanthropic capital. We help them bring government conversions of government schemes. We help them raise their own money. We don't help anybody who will not help themselves, which means their own contribution in cash and kind has to be there. A lot of times they will allocate land, they will allocate labor, they will do the preparation. So, and all the solutions are sustainable, they are nature-based solutions. They keep in mind the fact that every economic opportunity for that community has to be nature-friendly. So, we use a lot of levers for change. We use clean energy as a lever for change, because in rural areas, electricity is a problem. Steady supply of energy is a problem. Now, you can either choose to do it via diesel generators or do it via solar and other means. So we have chosen to do biodigesters, solar energy. In some other landscape, we could have wind, we could have hydro, we could have many options. But essentially, when you need energy to unlock economic potential, we will always choose clean and green versus everything else. We work on rain-fed agriculture, we work on regenerative agriculture, we work on increasing the food security of communities. There's our tagline is well-being, it's dignity and well-being of planet and people. So we're looking at all aspects of that landscape, including the biodiversity. So we're also teaching communities to build their biodiversity register. There's a great law called the Biodiversity Act under the Indian Constitution, which actually is compulsory for communities to make the People's Biodiversity Register. It's actually an asset register, which is a living document. It keeps getting added every year of all the biodiversity in your village boundary. And once it's on that register, the Biodiversity Management Committee actually gets complete power to see how to use it economically. So once it goes on to, it's like your laptop, right? From your company's book, you can't make it disappear. Can you?
Yeah.
There's a So once an old ancient 100-year tree or a nesting site for a great Indian hornbill is on your asset register, which is the People's Biodiversity Register, you can't make it disappear. And the responsibility of keeping that and economically using your assets, it could be medicinal plants, it could be forest produce, whatever it might be, in a responsible manner is the Biodiversity Management Committee's responsibility. And we build training and capacity for them to do their job well. So we are facilitators to building large amounts of capacity in the rural landscapes to be able to help themselves and bring in those levers of change: steady supply, water security, clean energy, women empowerment, financial literacy. Some of these things are no-brainers that you need these to be able to take that next step. So very comprehensive. It's a 15-year program in active phase with a 5-year support phase. So we will stay in every location for 20 years. What it brings is organizational challenges when you look backwards. When we are doing 20-year programs, none of the people who started this program are going to be around to wrap it up in 20 years. So we are also then building a more robust organizational where organizational methods, memory, systems, everything becomes very important because our projects are so long, right? So it immediately comes back to documenting everything, to having written trails, to having strong frameworks, for everything. So that how do you then keep track of what you started in year 1 or year 0 when you are in design phase, when you're wrapping up the program and concluding the program, when it's a 20-year long program? It's not it's not the UN which has continuity, it's just Raintree Foundation. Today, it's a young, small foundation. So it's going back to reflect on what our organization should be, how it should be designed. And there's a whole lot of change management right now happening to build that kind of organization, which is then de-linked from the founder's presence, even the current CEO or anybody manning, because we are building the organization and our cause to be much bigger than everybody else because of the nature of the work that we do, which is so patient, so long term, and focused entirely on resilience and sustainability. We have to work backwards to ensure our organization is resilient and sustainable as well. And so a lot of difference, which is why also you will see Raintree Foundation and its methods are very different from many other NGOs and many other well-meaning social organizations and enterprises that a lot of business families have founded, because our goals are very long-term and very integrated in their approach. Therefore, our organization also needs to change to reflect that. And so in terms of the way Raintree Foundation works is very, very different. And a lot of people will comment on it. We do things starkly different from many other organizations simply because our horizons are so long. And we need to hold ourselves accountable for that many years. As an organization, not as Leena as founder, not as somebody as CEO. It's the organization who's continuing it, and therefore all of us become smaller. Consequently,
you're truly building an institution.
We are trying to, because the goal here's the thing: building climate resilience for our country is a very big job to do. The minute we put up a model, 100 other people can do it, but that model has to be convincing. Right? So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think, because your model is so starkly different, because, a lot of people who do philanthropic initiatives just believe in giving free handouts, right? But what I'm hearing from you again and again is the self-sufficiency that you want to build in those areas, which is very unique. I don't think most people or initiatives think of it that way. And the 20-year cycle, I think that is truly...
It's a very long cycle. So I'm 57. We are starting Shasti River Basin. We are in year 0. We are in design phase right now. So somebody asked me, and we are in 9 villages and 21 square kilometers in Vele, where our first project started as a test case actually. And then it quickly went from piloting to being a full-fledged successful model, but it started initially to saying, let's try this model out on a smaller scale. It's 100 times increase in terms of landscape area itself, and from 9 to 400 villages is a very big jump. And somebody asked me overseas, are you ambitious? Are you foolish? I said, you know what? I'll be 77 when this is done. I don't think I'll care at that point. But it's worth doing.
Yeah. Of course.
Somebody has to do it, and somebody has to prove that patience pays. that working things out one step at a time pays, that there's no rush, but it needs to be solid in a manner it will not reverse.
And
That-
you'll be able to see it in your lifetime. Yes,
I will. I need to
absolutely.
stay alive and being able to go to the field till I'm 77
Yes.
for sure, if
But
not
it's-
beyond.
Honestly, it's so remarkable and inspiring in terms of everything that you've done and achieved, and the work that you're planting seeds for today, because
Mm-hmm.
you know it will empower so many generations to come. Thank you, Leena, for spending this
Thank you,
morning with
Shrishti.
me. It was fantastic deep diving with you in terms of how Raintree functions,
Mm-hmm.
both as a family office and a foundation. More power to you as you continue on this
Thank you
mission.
so much.
Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and you leave this hearing inspired to think about your legacy and the purpose of capital in your lives. Accumulation of wealth is one thing, but thinking about how to impact and positively enrich other lives is another. And that is the message that I want to leave with you today. Thank you for watching, and please remember to subscribe to our channel. You subscribing helps us bring better and better guests on the show all the time. See you next time.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.